Hi, I'm Daniel, and I want to welcome you to the Church Security Through Prevention podcast. My guest today is Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. My intention was to give you Colonel Grossman's entire bio. I recorded it and was editing my recording when I realized that the introduction was going to be about 8 minutes long. Okay, in my head, I can right now actually hear Colonel Grossman laughing at me and shaking his head for even trying. But what are friends for? So I'm going to give you a bit of a condensed version, and it is honestly only scratching the surface of who this man is and the heart that he has for others. Lieutenant Colonel Grossman is a director of Sheepdog Seminar Group International. He is also a director of Warrior Science Group, owner of Killology.com, member of the American Board of Certification in Homeland Security, and a member of the American College of Forensic Examiners. Colonel Grossman is an internationally recognized scholar, author, soldier, speaker, who is one of the world's foremost experts in the field of human aggression and the roots of violence and violent crime. Colonel Grossman is a former West Point psychology professor of military science, and an Army Ranger who has combined his experience to become the founder of a new field of scientific endeavor, which has been termed Killology. In this new field, Colonel Grossman has made revolutionary new contributions to the understanding of killing in war, the psychological costs of war, the root causes of the current virus of violent crime that is raging around the world, and the process of healing the victims of violence in war and peace. Now that only gives just a brief glimpse into who Colonel Grossman is. Often before I hit the record button on my screen, the guest and I talk for a bit. This time I actually hit the record right from the start, and we'll post some of that as bonus material. I did it because you never know what precious gems you'll get from Colonel Grossman, and as usual, I was not disappointed. Now, with that better understanding of Colonel Grossman, let's spend a few minutes hearing from Colonel Grossman himself. Colonel Grossman, welcome to the Church Security Through Prevention podcast.
Well, Dan, so good to be with you. We've been together on so many presentations. Dan has been a key part of our Sheepdog House of Worship security team training across the years. Been part of the team, a great brother in the Lord. You've been doing amazing things. And now here we are during the quarantine, and you're just knocking out podcasts and interviewing amazing people and putting great info out there. You know what? On the front end of these podcasts, I try to lay a foundation to understand. I've been on 60 Minutes in 2020 and Larry King. And it didn't add up to a hill of beans. You know, a week later, it was gone, forgotten, not accessible. You had 5 minutes, couldn't control what they would choose to say. And we had a time when citizen journalism was not really an option. There were just a handful of guardians at the gate. The networks and 2 newspapers in your town and 20 different magazines, and that was it. And if you didn't get there, then nobody heard your message for all practical purpose. And now we've broken through these people that barricaded citizen journalism. These podcasts are an amazing thing, and they will continue to be there for people in the years to come. It's almost like a book. It's a piece of you that you can leave, and for decades, well after we're gone, people may tap back into these. And I honor you for putting together this podcast, and I honor your listeners for being individuals who are seeking deeper knowledge. And it's a really neat things happening right now. And, there's so many negative aspects of technology, but here's a positive one. And I'm honored to be on board with you, my brother.
Well, thank you very much. It's, we haven't seen each other in a while, but the cool thing is that this family of God is that we are brothers. Mm-hmm. And, I know that I can shoot you a text and if I need to, and,
Amen.
To pray about something, to let you know about something, and we know that we're there for each other, and that's what's great about this. And I love doing the podcast. This is not something I'd ever thought I'd do, but it goes back to, God, doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called, and so here I am doing this, and so it's great, and it's great to have you on today. And I know there's several things we want to cover. So why don't we go ahead and jump into it? I know we kind of want to talk about having the right mindset and how we're serving and all the factors around that, that can play into serving well.
The first step in resiliency is motivation. To know that you're sacrificed for a noble and worthy purpose. Ain't nobody on the church security team to get rich. Nobody became a cop to get rich or joined the armed forces to get rich. When we chose to be a sheepdog, We chose a sacrifice. We're not going to get rich, at least not legally. You're probably not going to get very famous, at least not in a good way. You chose to sacrifice, and you must believe your sacrifice for a noble and worthy purpose. And I talk about how desperately bad the situation is out there, and kind of a foundational concept we need to wrap our mind around is that our tools that we use to measure the problem badly misrepresent the murder rate. We all talk about the murder rate. We compare it across the years, and it completely misrepresents the situation because medical technology is saving ever more lives every year. If we had World War II level medical technology, the murder rate would be 10 times what it is. Vietnam level medical technology, the murder rate would be at least 4 times what it is. One medical expert says he believes tourniquets alone in just the last decade have cut the murder rate in half. A decade ago, nobody carried tourniquets. Today, every cop carries a tourniquet. EMS slaps on a tourniquet. Individual citizens, I carry tourniquets everywhere I go. A cop slaps on a tourniquet, saves a life, he's prevented a murder. If just 20 to 30 people a day slap on a tourniquet and save a life, we cut the murder rate in half. So things are much worse than it looks. And the world needs what you have to give, but let's focus on the sacrifice that we're all making right now with the coronavirus and the quarantine that we're in the middle of right now. We hope and we pray that the mortality rate for this disease may be about 1%, maybe more. We pray there'll be less. Certainly among the general population, if we don't count the ones affected, count everybody, we're looking at hopefully well under 1%. The Bible says the good shepherd left the 99 to rescue the one. And that's the definition of love, to sacrifice, to find that precious one. And we are, this 99 are sacrificing to save the one. And that's love. And that's a very beautiful thing that I think the church should be able to get behind right now. And there will come a time when we say, this is enough. We keep going like this, the suicide rate is going to go up, we believe. We have 40,000 people a year die from traffic accidents. If nobody drove, we could cut that to zero. But it's somewhere down the line, we have to draw the line and accept that this is enough. But right now, something very beautiful and powerful is going on. It is the 99 sacrificing to save the one. And I believe the church can be leading the way during this time. As we again look at mindset and resiliency, one of the great foundations is the very first step. Your body has to be ready before you can deal with all the challenges before you. We think about physical fitness, we think about diet, but the weak link in our chain, the biological blind spot, is sleep deprivation. We're in the middle of a civilization-wide epidemic of sleep deprivation, and it is killing us. It's one of the greatest predictors of suicide. 18 hours without sleep, and you have impaired judgment equal to 0.08 legally drunk. 24 hours without sleep, impaired judgment equal to 0.10 above legally drunk. 2 nights without sleep, and you are psychotic. Any graduate of Army Ranger School will tell about hallucinations on the 3rd day without sleep. And we're in the middle of this epidemic of sleep deprivation. Worldwide, suicides have exploded. Teen suicides, they call them teenagers, 10, 11, 12-year-old. Teenage girls' suicide rate has tripled per capita in just the last decade. Again, taking your life is not a natural act. You have to have profoundly impaired judgment to take your life. Suicide and alcohol have always been closely related. Alcohol creates impaired judgment, make a bad decision, never get a chance to rethink it. But the most pervasive form of impaired judgment is sleep deprivation. And here's parenting 101 for the 21st century. When you send your kid to bed at night, take their cell phone away from them. No laptop in the room, no cell phone in the room. They have got to go to the room and sleep. A cop came up to me during a break in one of my classes. He said, I had a good girl. He said she was an A student. She said, Dad, it's embarrassing. You don't have to take my cell phone every night. You can trust me. He said, so I trust her. I let her keep her cell phone. A little while later, she took her life. My little girl took her life. And I said, I never knew the hell she was living in until we looked at the text messages on her cell phone. Night after night of ceaseless, relentless, vicious bullying. He says, I understood my little girl was bullied to death. What I didn't understand until now is she was sleep deprived, tormented, and bullied to death in front of my eyes, and I let it happen. He said, I can't ignore that text message in the middle of the night. How can we expect our kids to? He said, the one thing I could have done for my little girl was take her cell phone every night, let her turn off all the bad stuff in this world. We've got to understand what it's doing to us. Traffic deaths, decade after decade, traffic deaths came down. Airbags, seatbelts, technology, and now worldwide they're up. And the new factor is sleep deprivation. There's a reason why airline pilots and truck drivers require to log enough sleep. And the three major killers of our kids have exploded: traffic deaths, drug overdoses, and suicides. Drug overdoses, just taking drugs is impaired judgment. But the opiate epidemic, prescription opiates have always been there. Why is that the drug of choice? Why worldwide is there this opiate epidemic? Well, sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. The tendons and muscles never have a chance to fully relax. These mega doses of caffeine prevent you from getting deep cycle sleep, and the muscles and tendons never fully relax. Doc, I heard all the time, give me a pill to fix. You don't need a pill, you need more sleep. You need to knock off the caffeine shortly after lunch, because it's stopping you. Any caffeine after lunch is getting in the way of your sleep, and it's stopping you from getting deep cycle sleep. So we got this worldwide epidemic of suicides, traffic deaths, and drug overdoses, especially with our kids, but also adults. And nobody's saying, what is the new factor? We know what it is, but it's an uphill battle, because the cell phone company is never going to tell you your kid doesn't need a cell phone. They're never going to tell you that you shouldn't be watching TV all night long. It's not in their best interest to tell you these things. So we got to protect ourselves. And the first step in resiliency is, number one, to know our sacrifice for a noble and worthy. And number two, to have our body ready. And sleep is a biological blind spot. Our bodies are pretty good at getting air, food, water. You ever think how good the body's getting rid of amount of food? How much extra food would a kid have to eat to put on 1 extra pound a month? If a kid puts on 1 extra pound a month, by the time he's 10, he's 120 pounds overweight. As we get older, it gets harder, but our bodies are good at getting air, food, water. Sleep is a biological blind spot. It always happened naturally. Every night, without fail, it got dark. And there's nothing you could do. A little talking, maybe some sex, you went to sleep. Then we invented the light bulb and the television, the video game, and especially the video game. The thing to understand about these games is they're designed to be impossible to turn off. They're the most immersive, addictive thing that could possibly be designed. Every year, they get more immersive, more addictive, more impossible to turn off. All you old timers out there, remember Tetris? Think Tetris.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, think Tetris on steroids with crack. And understand that each generation of video games is designed to be more and more addictive, impossible to turn off. And so we're dealing with that kind of digital crack here. And we lose track of time. There's nothing wrong with adults playing any game, but you got to set a timer. And we got to make sure we monitor that sleep for ourselves and for our loved ones. My most recent book, be coming out, the ebook will come out any day now, on spiritual combat. This day and age, who knows what's get out of it, the actual paper version of the book and distribution, but the electronic version on spiritual combat hopefully be out anytime. And the audio book should be not far behind it. I did the reading on the audio. I think it's very powerful. It's the most important audio book I've ever done. But we talk about recognizing in spiritual combat that the ultimate objective is to bring people to the knowledge of salvation. That suffering here on earth is nothing compared to saving a soul for eternity. And what happens here in this world could be part of the supreme commander. We're sheepdogs under the authority of the great shepherd. And the great shepherd tells us where to go and what to do. But just understand that when God doesn't answer your prayers the way you think he should, that God has a broader vision and a broader reach, and lack of suffering on this world, a few extra months or years on this world are nothing compared to eternity in heaven. And if we stay focused on that, then that is the most powerful mindset dynamic the world has ever seen. And it will sustain us through everything that's coming. Let's understand, the world says life is hard, then you die. God says to live is Christ and to die is gain. So it's your choice. Which one's going to be? Life is hard, then you die? No. To live is Christ. To live is to be in Christ, and it's beautiful, glorious. And to die is even better. So all preparation for combat, all training is nothing. It's wood, hay, and stubble compared to this eternal perspective. And I really try to put that out in this book on spiritual combat. Now, that's what, when we talk to this community, faith-based security community, when we talk to those who are dedicated to protecting their flock and their little part of the world, they need to understand what the greatest strength is. And we begin the book on spiritual combat with the full armor of God. And early on, we come to the helmet of salvation. The thing to understand is that this world can chew you up and spit you out. This world can kill you. Will we crawl up inside the helmet of salvation and know that the important part, the eternal part, can never be harmed? The only part of armor we wear much today is helmet. Construction workers wear helmets. Soldiers still wear helmets. It protects the most important part of our body. If I lose an arm, I'm still me. I lose a kidney, I can keep going. If I lose my mind, I'm not me anymore. I can't keep going. So protecting our mind is most important. Our brain is most important. But in the spiritual perspective, that is a helmet of salvation. And knowing that whatever this world hands to us, however dark and dismal it becomes, is nothing. And God's greatest miracle is not to give us a few extra years on this earth or to reduce our suffering. His greatest miracle, the miracle that happens every day, is to take our sinful souls and to give us salvation through the blood and sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And that's a beautiful and powerful thing. And so I tell you, when we talk about the people in this network, those are individuals who are most prepared to receive the ultimate dynamic in mindset, and that's that spiritual mindset. And the overall outcome of that is victory. To live as Christ and to die as gain. Does that all make sense?
Absolutely.
So, when as you're doing these, whatever other areas can you think about? We talked about sleep, and I've got some sleep hacks that may be of value. They can apply tonight. Psychologists talk about an internal locus of control, and I call it an eternal locus of control. Take it a little bit further. What psychologists would tell you, the internal locus of control. Identify all the things in this world you can't control and let go of them. The past. Everything in the past is done. Got to let go of it. It'll drive you mad. Turn it over to God. See, that's what we've got that the world doesn't have. We have a loving Father that we can turn these things over to. We can hand these things to God. What's happening at the global level? What's happening? Nothing you can do about that right now. Hand it over to God. There's only one thing in the universe you can control. It's yourself right now.
Right. Absolutely.
If we give way to bitterness, if we give way to cynicism or complacency or denial, that is the one thing we can control. And you've given the world a victory with your own hand, and we will not give them that victory. So let me give you some hacks that your listeners can use tonight. Identify the things you can do and do them. And sleep 101 begins with nap 101. Naps are good, but don't let naps get in the way of a good night's sleep. If you know you're going to have a good night's sleep, if you know you probably have uninterrupted, if you're a first responder, if you're a medical professional going 100 miles an hour, grab that nap whenever you can. But the rest of us, anything more than about a 30-minute nap can really get in the way of a good night's sleep. And the minimum nap is 30 minutes. Anything less than 30 minutes, pretty much a waste of time. So what that means to us is the snooze alarm is not our friend. The snooze alarm is always set for 10 minutes because that's just enough time to get that startle response. We've all been there. The snooze alarm is an evil little button that makes you relive the worst part of every day over and over again. And do some research on this. The research tells us that you are doing actual psychological, physical harm to your body with the snooze alarm. It's like you're trying to force your body to learn to fall into deep cycle sleep in 10 minutes, and it can't do it. And it's a form of torture. But maybe as sheepdogs, the most important dynamic becomes self-discipline, self-control. Do I control my body, or does my body control me? The ultimate question every sheepdog has to ask is the first act of every day to surrender your body and hit the snooze alarm. It's the first act of every day to roll out of bed and take charge of your life.
Right.
Muhammad Ali, great champion boxer, he said championship began every morning the alarm went off. He hated running so bad, he put his running shoes on top of the alarm. When he hit the alarm, he grabbed his running shoes. That's champion willpower. And he give a kid a marshmallow. Tell him, you eat this marshmallow right now. I'll be back in 3 months. Another one. You don't eat it. Have them both. That is one of the single greatest predictors of success. More than IQ. You can't change your IQ. You can't change your kid's IQ. You can change your self-discipline, your willpower right now. Set your cell phone for 20 alarms. 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. By that time you turn all those alarms off, you're up. And the you that goes to bed tonight, it has got to make you that get up in the morning, get out of bed. And one other thing, you know what? At 30-minute snooze, a 10-minute snooze, another snooze, the third snooze, you just threw away 30 minutes of your day. Those 3 snoozes, no as far as sleep goes, no as far as your life goes. I will teach you a trick that'll put 30 minutes of quality sleep back in every day. Adds up to 3.5 hours sleep back in every week. 2 pure, beautiful nights sleep back in every month. 24 hours sleep back in every year. 24 nights sleep back in every year. Set the alarm a half hour later and get the heck out of bed. And so this dynamic of the snooze alarm is not our friend. That dark is our friend. Starting tonight, make the room as dark as you can. We are designed to sleep in a totally dark room. Major research in the sleep lab, a totally dark room, bathroom light is on and the door is shut. The light coming under the crack of the bathroom door is enough light to stop your body from producing the melatonin that you need. And so go online now and order a sleep mask. On my Facebook page a little while back, I did a little piece on my favorite masks and why I think they're important. But just wear, that combination of dark room and a sleep mask. And you can start tonight and teach your children to sleep in the dark. Babies are sloshing with melatonin. Babies can sleep anywhere. As we get older and older, their body produces less and less melatonin. And by the time we become teenagers, it starts being really important that we sleep in a truly dark room. Remember, sleep deprivation is killing our kids. Suicides, traffic deaths, and drug overdoses. You can rock your world and your child's world starting tonight by sleeping in a totally dark room. Alcohol is not our friend. And nothing wrong with a nightcap, 1 beer, 1 glass of wine on the way to bed. Anything more than that, and it has a negative impact. Don't use alcohol to put yourself to sleep. I'm a big fan on managing our sleep. It's a biological blind spot. And there's sleep, wear the Fitbit. I think the Fitbit Charge 3 might be doing the best job. It's waterproof, wear it in the shower, wear it in the pool. It will track your heart rate. It will track your steps and your calories. It will track your sleep and your cycles of sleep. Just wear the band, download the app. It'll tell you, as an adult, you need 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. You've gotten 4 hours sleep for the last 2 months. You're killing yourself. You can't keep going like this. You need to get some sleep. So wear that sleep app, pound down 3 beers, go to bed, and see what it does to your sleep. You'll fall quickly into a shallow sleep. You'll wake up in a couple hours and can't get back to sleep. Caffeine can be our friend. Caffeine is one of the most useful tools we've ever found to temporarily limit your vulnerability of minimal side effects if you're not abusing the drug on a daily basis. You need mega doses of caffeine. All you're doing is building up your addiction to the drug, and it's not doing as good it should be. And cut off caffeine shortly after lunch, so you get that deep cycle sleep. So a couple of things you can do starting tonight. Let go of all the things you can't control. Identify the things you can control. Don't hit that snooze alarm in the morning. Set the alarm later if you have to. and, and set your cell phone for 10 alarms. By the time you turn them off, you're up. I'm in charge of my body. My body's not in charge of me. Make the room as dark as you can. Don't use alcohol to put yourself to sleep. Nothing wrong with a nightcap any more than one drink, counterproductive. Don't wake up in the night and have a smoke. This is the one time to show some discipline. Use caffeine effectively. It can make an amazing difference in a life starting tonight. Cut off caffeine shortly after lunch and start seeing that amazing quality dynamic that happens as we make our body ready. We apply sleep. Another thing that I think I'm able to teach my sheepdogs that maybe other guests haven't been able to cover.
We just want to take a quick break here to let you know how to contact us and where to find out more about our national seminar. I see communities that may know why church security is important, but they may not be doing anything about it or don't know how to do it well. Our national seminars are for ushers, greeters, children's workers, staff, volunteers, your security teams, and other ministries in your community. We say that this is a level 1 training that is designed to help equip you to serve well in your various ministries while maintaining a safe place for people to come. Getting churches on the same or similar page when it comes to security will only make the community safer as well. The easiest way to find out more information or to contact us is to go to cv-ministries.com. There you'll find a variety of training DVDs and books, with more being developed all the time. There's also a place at the bottom of the page where you can sign up for our monthly newsletter, and we would love your feedback on topics or guests that you would like to hear on future podcasts. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to the podcast.
Is forewarned and forearmed about what's happening in a life and death event. And one of these is tunnel vision. When we talk about perceptual distortions in combat, one of the most common ones is tunnel vision. And bad guys have tunnel vision too. And what that means is a quick sidestep can take you literally off their radar screen. Now, I'm in airports all the time. I'm a cop. When I'm home, I got a gun on all the time. But when I'm traveling, I can't always carry a gun. What do I do if I'm in an airport like Fort Lauderdale? This idiot takes his rifle out and starts mass murdering people. I'm going toward the sound of the guns, but I go smart. I always wear a travel vest, a leather vest. I'm going to swing that thing over my head. And as soon as he's looking at me, I'm going to throw it at him and sidestep. I'm going to continue to charge. And then I'm going to pull my cell phone out and throw it at him and sidestep again. Every time you sidestep, you're coming off their radar screen, and then tackle them. Just understand that tunnel vision is common, and we need to be scanning, and we need to have people checking other sectors. Auditory exclusion. Hunters will tell you that when they shoot a deer, they don't hear the shot and their ears don't ring. Well, you're still getting hearing loss. The shutout is in the nerve, but the ear's still being hammered. Wear hearing protection when you hunt. You'd be a deaf old geezer like me. It's a pain in the butt. But how could we have had 500 years of gunpowder combat and not let people know the shots get muted in combat? Slow motion time. The slow motion time is real. And it absolutely blows people's minds. I have had hundreds of people tell me they can see the bullet in combat, and I believe them. It's like airsoft or paintball. The bullet's slow enough you track with your eyes, and I believe them. And then memory gaps and memory distortions. Every year we hold down the murder rate with better technology. And cops hold down the number of murdered cops every year. Body armor, tactics, training, technology, medical technology. The only good measure of the problem is what I call the year-over-year increase in cops murdered. In 2016, 5 cops murdered in one incident in Dallas, 4 cops murdered in Baton Rouge. 2016 was the single worst year-over-year increase in cops murdered in the history of our nation. We also had bad guys come to the cop's house to murder their family. So Mama Bear protecting her cubs can be one of the most dangerous things on the planet. The cop's wife killed this guy, game over. And she said, I had no problem killing that man to protect my family. Females in particular, when they use violence, they use it in a protective mode. And I've seen it over and over again. They're not too particularly troubled by having to use violence to protect their loved ones. But she said, what absolutely messed me up is I heard the audio recording of my 911 call, and to this day, I have no memory of making that call. She said, it was eating me alive. Then somebody gave me a book on combat. Said, look, it's in the book. page 55, memory gaps. And she was okay. She was fine. Psychologists call that normalizing. You say that's normal. It's too trivial a term for something that's so powerful. It was bugging the daylights out of her. She finds out it's normal. Boom, you're fine. But it's so much better to know this stuff ahead of time instead of trying to fill in the gaps afterwards. And then memory distortions. And some research says this, maybe around 1 out of 5 trained seasoned law enforcement officers will actually remember something that did not happen. And in the state of Texas, it's the law. The rest of the nation is common sense. The cop has the right to see every video before they make their statement. And you make a statement, you got memory gaps, you got memory distortions, you put that on paper, you got to live with it in court, it'll eat you alive. So if trained seasoned cops can have memory gaps and memory distortions, how much more so could it happen to us? We're sheepdogs. We're prepared for the moment, but we're far from cops to put our life on the line every day. And what we tell people is we want you to survive physically, psychologically, spiritually, and legally. And after you've been in a deadly force incident, this is not the time to shoot your mouth off. Trained seasoned cops will make the initial statement, I was in fear for my life, this situation, there's a bad guy, there's the evidence, these are witnesses that I've identified, I secured the crime scene, I want to talk to my lawyer. And every lawyer on the planet will tell you, this is not the time to be shooting your mouth off. You got memory gaps, you got memory distortions. You tell people right off the bat, I was in fear for my life, I used deadly force, and I want to talk to my attorney. And to get all the information before you make a complete formal statement. So recognize that these things happening in the life and death event are normal, but then after the event, well, we divide our body into 2 parts, the sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic. Now, one is fight or flight, the other is rest and digest. When we're a life and death event, the heart rate explodes, your body dumps all kinds of hormones, and you're in fight or flight mode. And when the danger is over, then you crash. Well, in a nutshell, PTSD is every time you remember it, you relive it. You go on that roller coaster ride again. Your heart rate goes up. You think about it. You talk about it. Heart rate starts going up. That is not PTSD. It's normal. And become PTSD. As you re-experience the event, it scares the daylights out of you, and you try to not think about it. You will literally drive yourself crazy trying to not think about it. What you got to do is separate the memory from the emotions. Many ways docs can help with that, but one tool that we use, it's really a revolution out there, is have somebody stop and take a big swig of water. When you take a big swig of water, you're pulling the body from fight or flight to rest and digest. It's sending a powerful message that says, we're safe. We got time for a drink of water. You know what? Rest and digest, this is salivation. We see food, we salivate. On the other end is dry mouth. One of the very common symptoms of a stressful event is dry mouth. And so taking that swig of water sends a powerful message. A friend of mine, one of our nation's leading therapists for federal law enforcement officers, and she told me, she said 6 years of college, 14 years of practice, and that stupid bottle of water is doing more good than anything I've ever done. They talk about what happened, and every time they start to become emotional, stop, take a swig of water. Now, that's just one trick that Doc's got in the bag. Doc's got a whole bag full of tricks. If we can't release that memory in that way, there's other things that we can do. But just understand, re-experience the event is normal. Be forewarned and forearmed. Have a little tool. The breathing exercise that I teach in my book is really the tool. You don't always have a bottle of water. You can always stop and take a breath and regain control. Organized in my files, I've got case studies organized by topics, and the breathing is by far the largest file. A lady who was in a hospital, she'd had a tube down her throat. She can't communicate. She began to panic, and she can communicate by writing on a pad. And she and her husband had read On Combat and the breathing, and she wrote Grossman breathing, and he knew it. And he began to coach her in through the nose, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out through the lips, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4. And she was gasping and choking, and she was able to regain control and literally possibly save her life. Just 2 weeks ago, I got an email from a soldier. He came back from Iraq. He's out of the service. He's having a little difficulty. He's doing some mountain climbing and some outdoor stuff to kind of get his head back together. That's a beautiful concept. He said, I woke up, we're in our little base camp high up on a glacier, a mountain glacier. And I wake up in the night completely disoriented. I start wandering around in the dark, trying to figure out what's going on. And I didn't have my crampons I'm on an ice glacier without the crampons to provide, to stop me from slipping. And I remembered you. I heard your voice saying in through the nose, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out through the lips, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4. He said, I took a couple of breaths, regained control, and I realized I was literally a foot away from stepping off a cliff. And so we don't always have a bottle of water. We always have that breathing that we can use to leash in so that we can have the memory and not go on this roller coaster ride of sympathetic nervous system arousal, heart rate pounding, and that's the path to healing. So that's all in my book on combat. We kind of wrap up on combat with what I call my spiritual ambush. And what we tell people is, no matter where you come from, you got an idea there might be a God, and it might be the God of the Bible. All your life, you've seen somebody waving a black book and shouting, thou shalt not kill. If that's all you know, you have to kill somebody, kick your tail. So let's understand that people who sent our troops off to war in World War II were not a bunch of hypocrites. We killed millions of the enemy in World War II. And the world would be a dark and desperate place today if we hadn't fought and won that war. So think about it now. Were all of our pastors and ministers and chaplains and rabbis, were they all hypocrites? Did they all preach, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not kill? The war began, and they all said, it's cool. You can kill those guys. No, that's not what happened. And there's all the difference in the world between you shall not murder. All the Jewish translations, original Hebrew, translate shall not murder. Almost all the modern translations translate is shall not murder. All of that's in On Combat, verse after verse, and we go into deeper level too in my book on spiritual combat. Just remember, there's never anything but the highest honor for those who go in harm's way to protect the innocent. And Jesus said, greater love is no one than this, that they give their life for their friends. But there are many ways to give your life. And sometimes the greatest love is not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice. To walk out that door every day prepared to protect and serve. To do the job set before you to the utmost of your ability. Not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice. For most of us, therein lies the greatest love. So that's kind of a fast forward through the entire book and my sheepdog class. Does that all make sense from your perspective, Dan? Are those things we can apply?
Absolutely. A lot of what you've talked about, I mentioned that, the sleep deprivation, as I list things on, if they come to church to serve and you're sleep deprived, you've had alcohol, you're on medication of some sort that's going to affect your judgment, then you don't serve. Yes. I talk about the water aspect too, because that's one of the key points. I tell churches to have water all over the place because of the whole breathing aspect and what that does to the individual that is got that adrenaline rush going through and not totally thinking clearly. It gives them that pause. It gives them that oxygen back to be able to think a little clearer and maybe be able to de-escalate that situation far easier.
In another way, when we talk about coming and serving, in my class, when I teach this, I talk about, having a marksmanship standard and holding people to that standard. When somebody comes up and says, I want to be I got my concealed carry permit, I want to be on the security team. That's a beautiful thing. And there's many things we can do on this team. Let's come back to praying. Prayer is a part of the battle. in a few minutes. But many ways you can serve in this team. But we want you to come to the range with us. We're gonna be on the range next week. Let's see how you shoot. If you don't shoot up to standard, we'll get you up to standard. But set a standard and hold people to that standard. You and I,
Absolutely.
we worked together with Officer Greg Stevens. In May of 2015, Draw the Prophet Muhammad Art Festival, that's out of Dallas, Texas. In the eyes of Islam, the Draw the Prophet is a terrible crime. They're afraid to draw bad guys, and it did. Two art critics from Arizona showed up with AK-47s and body armor. Now, you could have been the Pulse nightclub types too. They had body armor. They had rifles. They rolled out of the vehicle. Officer Greg Stevens was doing his job. He wasn't sitting in his car. He didn't have his head down in his cell phone. He was doing his job. He was paying attention. So being on a security team doesn't mean getting on your cell phone or sitting in your car. It means standing there and looking and watching and being ready. The two killers, would-be mass murderers, rolled out of the vehicle with rifles and body armor, and Officer Greg Stevens killed them both. One of the greatest feats of marksmanship and courage in American history. Prior to that point, he never fired his gun in a life and death event. And Greg, he wasn't a SWAT dog, and he wasn't a competitive shooter, but he trained a lot, and he trained hard. His department had an open range at least once a month. The range is open, ammo available, and he was there. And I'd like to say that, for 37 years as a law enforcement officer, Officer Greg Stevens made a deposit in his savings account. In May of 2015, it made your withdrawal. How's your saving account looking? Are you ready to go to battle? So get that range time in there. Get that experience in there. Set that standard for your people. But we talked about many things we can do. One of the things we can do is have somebody on the team whose job it is to pray. And they got their head up and they got their eyes open, but they immediately come to the Lord in prayer. And I tell the story, and I wrote it in this book on spiritual combat. An old Baptist pastor of mine in Texas back in the 90s told me about something that happened that he'd heard about decades before. A member of his congregation, there'd been an American unit in the Korean War attacked an enemy hilltop position. And they were defeated and driven back down to the base of the hill. Partway up the hill is a wounded American soldier crying out in pain, bleeding his life out. At the base of the hill, a young soldier looks at his watch and does nothing. Another soldier scrambles up the hill to rescue his comrade and is gunned down, just withering enemy fire. The base of the hill, one soldier looks, watch again, does nothing. Another soldier scrambles up the hill to rescue his friend, is gunned down. Finally, our young soldier looks at his watch one more time, takes a deep breath, and scrambles up the hill. Withering enemy fire, gasping with fear and exertion, he grabs his friend. They roll down, they scramble and skitter and scramble down to the base of the hill to safety in the trenches at the base of the hill. And the medics go to treat the wounded. The commander walks up to this young soldier and said, "That is the bravest thing I've ever seen." Still gasping with exertion and fear, he said, "No, sir, it wasn't." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Two men just died trying to rescue that man. How do you say that wasn't brave?" He said, "Sir, you don't understand. I know my grandmother in Chicago goes to bed at 9 o'clock on the nose and prays for me." He said, "I was waiting for 9 o'clock Chicago time." So the moral of the story is that grandmother on her knees praying for her grandson on the other side of the planet can be as powerful a force as any other force on this planet. And never hesitate to come to the Lord in prayer. Just make it an automatic response. I give another example in the book. I think you may find it value. I had a sergeant major. I was a young lieutenant and captain in my battalion in Fort Lewis, Washington in the early 1980s. And he had received the Distinguished Service Cross in Vietnam, and second highest award after the Medal of Honor. And he had 6 years in Vietnam. Now, a lot of people were drafted for a year. Some volunteered for a second year. Very, very few people had 6 years of continuous combat in Vietnam. And he told me about when he'd won his DSC, had received his Distinguished Service Cross. He was the platoon leader, a kind of a mid-level sergeant, but in charge of a platoon, no officer. There was a reaction platoon for air base security. And the air base was being overrun with a regimental size attack. And he called in artillery, he called in airstrikes, he maneuvered his units, he maneuvered other units. You can understand how complex it is calling an airstrike or calling artillery. You have to have precise formats. You have to have precise communication. You have to have precise map skills to give a precise grid coordinated to call in airstrikes. Every one of them has a different format, has to be done exactly the right way. You have to have precise map reading dynamics to bring it all in. And he hammered them. He devastated them. He was outnumbered by a factor of 20-1. And he absolutely shattered the unit, maneuvered other units in to send them staggering back off into the jungle. And he told me, he said, I'd been at war for 5 years at that point, and it was just another day in the office. That's how we should be with prayer. We should be so good, so consistent, so automatic that it would be just like that sergeant major earning his Distinguished Service Cross. We want to be that good with prayer, bringing it up and using it and understanding the power of it, that we have the authority to come to our Supreme Commander anytime to bring the help that we need in our moment of truth.
Yeah, and I tell people that too, that it's our relationship with Christ that allows us to serve in the way that we're called to serve. And if our relationship with Him and our communication with Him isn't on the right track, then we're not going to serve well to those that are coming into the church.
Praise God, amen. You know, a book that came out just a year ago is Bulletproof Marriage. I co-authored the book, but my co-author, Adam Davis, had been a police officer previously, now a pastor. And Adam Davis did all the heavy lifting of this book. It's a Bulletproof Marriage, a 90-day devotional, Sheepdog and Spouse, for 90 days. And the book has been out just a year. Look on Amazon, the book, Bulletproof Marriage, 90-day devotional. Over 100 reviews, 5 stars. 5 stars on Amazon. It's like a 4.0 GPA. You know, one B and you never get it back again. And we just really to serve. It's about sheepdog and spouse, military, first responders, and your spouse. 5 minutes a day, and for 90 days, enormous. And look at the reviews, just touching so many lives. And Adam is put together a master class now. So many people came back and said, "Okay, what's the next step? We've been through the book. What's the next step?" So he's got this master class, this Bulletproof Marriage master class, and he's doing some enrichment with that. He did an interview with me, and the subject was communication. And I talked about, he talks about you don't come home and communicate to your spouse like you would communicate to a criminal on the streets. And you don't talk to the criminal like you would talk to your child as you're reading them a bedtime story. Different people deserve different levels of communication. You have to work on that and focus it. And my contribution to the brilliant dynamic was that one form of communication is you and your spouse going to the Lord in prayer every night, together. In the Bible, Jesus tells us, wherever 2 or more of you request in my name, the Father will hear. And there's special power in prayers when there's 2 of you together. And so, you pray for your spouse. I hold her hand, I cradle her head, I pray for her, the best of blessings and the host of angels to protect. We call out our grandchildren by name and ask that God will bless these children and give her a spirit of peace that will flow through her life, peace like a river to give and receive. And the thing about it is, there's 3 of us communicating. There's her, there's me, and there's God. And we're talking to God. And she prays for me. And I'm telling you, when you pray for your spouse, when you cradle their head and pray for them, everything becomes different. All the little things that eat away at you, all of the things where you lose your patience and you're troubled, that those things are so much easier to control. Because communication is a two-way street. And while you're praying to him, God is communicating back to you. And he gives us that ability to set aside those bitter words and those bitter thoughts that are so destructive, and to give us this self-control to say that this is nothing. I'm joyful to get up and help you with this thing. I'm joyful to get up and do this thing for you. And a marriage should be 75-75, and not 50-50, 75-75. Both of you are sacrificial. Both of you are determined to give more than you get. And one person says, "Oh, shouldn't it be 100%, 100%?" No, even God only asks for 10%. You got to draw a reasonable line somewhere. But 75%, that's not a bad way to put it. Both of us want to give more than we get out of this relationship. So when we talk about communication, we talk about the power of prayer. Never forget that you have a prayer buddy. When we're in our book, A Bulletproof Marriage, we call them your battle buddy for life, your spouse, your ultimate backup officer, your spouse. They're always there for you. We need to communicate, let each other know. And I talked to him, the first iteration that I did is in Richmond on his master class, was, and God just gave me this idea out of nowhere. You don't always have time to call and say, pray for me. You don't have time even to send a text message that says, pray for me. It might be just a cop going to a domestic call out. Could be nothing, but it could be something. As you go into that thing, you bring it up in prayer and just hit one icon on your screen to your spouse, the little prayer icon. Hit one icon and it says, pray for me. I'll tell you later what it was all about. Right now, give me your prayers. One icon. Push one key. Send that little prayer hand signal that says, pray for me. And we should pray for each other periodically throughout the day. But when you hit a particular point when our nerves are razzled and the kids are driving us crazy, send a little icon to your husband that says, pray for me. And you know that they're doing that. So it's all about communication. And the ultimate communication is that relationship that we have with God through Jesus.
Absolutely. Colonel, I really appreciate, as always, our time together today. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me.
My pleasure, Dan. As I said, my hat's off to you for doing this and to your listeners for seeking deeper knowledge. In the end, the ultimate love is not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice.
Amen.
The magnificent sheepdogs that you're training to, they have dedicated themselves to protecting the innocent and represent something more powerful and beautiful in our civilization.
Well, thank you for what you're doing, and continue to pray for you and your family that you guys remain safe and healthy out there during this time.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this podcast. If you really enjoyed it and you found it of benefit to you, we really appreciate your feedback. There's several different ways that you can provide us feedback. One of them is to subscribe to the podcast. It's to share it with others, and another is to contact us directly, particularly if you have any questions or concerns, or you want more information on how to host a seminar in your community. You can contact me directly at danielblevins@cv@heart.com, or you can go to our website, that's cv-ministries.com. Both of those will get you in the right direction. Until next time, make sure that you're out there protecting the flock with a heart of service.